The wind came in low across the plains, dragging dust like a tired animal, whispering against the boards of the town as if it knew secrets buried beneath them. Caleb Rourke sat his horse just outside the edge of town, where the road bent and the land began to forget people. He didn't move for a long while. The sun leaned west, flattening shadows, turning everything the color of old bones. His hat brim cut his face in half, but what could be seen of him looked worn down to essentials. Jaw tight, eyes distant, a man pared back by years that had taken more than they had given. He studied the place like a man deciding whether to step into a memory he didn't trust. The sign read Harlow's Crossing, though the letters had begun to peel like scabs. A piano coughed somewhere inside town. Laughter followed, thin and sharp. Caleb nudged his horse forward. The saloon smelled of whiskey, sweat, and something sour that never quite left the wood. Conversations dipped when he entered, not out of fear exactly, but recognition of a man who carried quiet with him like a weapon. He moved to the bar. "Whiskey," he said. The barkeep poured without asking questions. Caleb appreciated that. He hadn't yet lifted the glass when the door behind him opened again. This time the silence came harder, sudden and brittle. Caleb didn't turn, but he felt it. The shift, the way men straightened or leaned back, like they were bracing. Bootsteps, not hurried, controlled. A man's voice followed, easy and mean. "Afternoon, gentlemen. Sheriff Dalton." Caleb had heard the name before, drifting through cattle trails and campfires, always with a certain tone. Not respect, something closer to resignation. Dalton came to the bar and set his hand down beside Caleb's glass, fingers heavy with rings. "Passing through?" Dalton asked. Caleb took his drink. "Something like that." Dalton smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You'll find we like to know who's passing through." Caleb set the glass down. "Now you do." For a moment, nothing moved between them but breath. Then Dalton laughed softly and turned away. "Enjoy your stay." The room exhaled. Caleb didn't. He found the auction behind the general store. Didn't go looking for it. Just heard the voice. Loud, practiced, carrying over the scrape of boots and murmur of gathered men. Strong hands, good for housework. No trouble if handled right. Caleb stopped. There were maybe 20 men gathered in a loose half-circle. At the center stood a platform, rough planks, hastily nailed, and on it, a woman. She stood very still. Her dress had once been blue, though dust had claimed most of its color. Her hair was tied back, loose strands stuck to her face. There was a bruise at her jaw, yellowing at the edges. She didn't look at the crowd, didn't look anywhere. The man beside her, slick vest, quick smile, lifted her chin with 2 fingers. "Go on," he said to the crowd. "Fine as any you'll find west of the river." A few men chuckled. Caleb felt something shift inside him, something old and familiar. Not anger, not yet. Something colder. Recognition. "What's her name?" someone called. The man shrugged. "Names ain't part of the price." A ripple of laughter. Caleb stepped forward. "How much?" he asked. The auctioneer glanced at him, measuring. "Depends what you're offering." Caleb didn't look at the man. He looked at the woman. For a moment her eyes lifted. They were not pleading, not hopeful, just tired. "Name your price," Caleb said. They left town as the sun dropped. She sat behind him on the horse, not holding on at first, her hands resting lightly against his coat as if she expected to be told not to touch. After a mile, the ground turned uneven. The horse shifted, and she steadied herself, fingers gripping the fabric at his side. He felt it, said nothing. The sky went from gold to ash. The wind softened. "What's your name?" he asked after a while. Silence stretched, then quietly, "Eliza." He nodded, though she couldn't see it. "Caleb." She didn't respond. They rode on. His ranch was small, not much more than a cabin, a lean-to, and a stretch of land that had learned to survive on little. A few cattle moved slow in the distance, shadows against the dying light. Caleb dismounted first and turned to help her down. She hesitated before taking his hand. Her fingers were cold. Inside, the cabin smelled of wood smoke and leather. Sparse. "Orderly. Everything in its place. There's water out back," he said. "You can wash. I'll make something to eat." She nodded, already moving toward the door again. He watched her go. For a long time, he stood there, hand still half raised from where it had steadied her. Days passed. They fell into a rhythm that neither of them named. Eliza worked without being asked, mending, cleaning, tending to small things that made the place feel less like a shelter and more like something lived in. Caleb rode out early, came back late. They spoke little, but the silence between them changed. It softened. One evening, she stood in the doorway as he returned, the last light catching in her hair. "You don't have to keep me," she said. He slid from the saddle. "Didn't buy you to keep you." "Then why?" He paused, one hand resting on the horse's neck. "I don't know," he said finally. She studied him, searching for something he hadn't offered. People don't do things without reason. Caleb looked at her then. "Maybe they do," he said. The past came back slow. It always did, in the quiet moments, in the spaces between words. One night he woke to the sound of her voice, soft, strained. "No, please." He was out of bed before he was fully awake. She sat on the floor near the hearth, arms wrapped around herself, breath uneven. He stopped a few steps away. "Eliza." She flinched. "It's just me," he said. Her eyes found him in the dim light. For a moment, she looked like she might break apart entirely. Then she didn't. "I'm fine," she said. He didn't believe her. Didn't say so. Instead, he moved to the table, poured water, and set the cup within reach. She looked at it for a long time before taking it. Their fingers brushed. This time, she didn't pull away. Trouble came the way it always did. Quiet at first, a rider on the horizon. Then two. Then three. Caleb saw them from the field, sun glinting off something metallic. He didn't rush. Just walked back toward the house, slow and steady, wiping his hands on his trousers. Eliza stood in the doorway again. "Who are they?" she asked. Caleb didn't answer right away. "Go inside," he said. "I'm not hiding." He looked at her. Something had changed in her eyes. Not fear. Something harder. "They're not here for you to stand your ground," he said. "They might be." The riders drew closer. Caleb exhaled. "Inside," he said again. This time, she went. Sheriff Dalton dismounted first. "Evening," he called, as if they were neighbors. Caleb stood a few feet from the door. "You're a long way from town." Dalton smiled. "Got business." His gaze flicked past Caleb toward the cabin. "That woman you bought, she belongs to someone." Caleb's expression didn't change. "Does she?" "Now I'm willing to be reasonable," Dalton continued. "You hand her over, we forget this whole misunderstanding." Caleb said nothing. The wind shifted, dust lifted between them. Dalton's smile thinned. "Don't make this difficult." Caleb's hand rested near his side, not on his gun, just near. "She's not going back," he said. Dalton's eyes hardened. "Then you're stealing property." Caleb's voice stayed even. "I don't see any property here." For a moment the world held its breath. Then Dalton moved. The gunshot cracked the air, sharp and final. One of Dalton's men went down. The others scattered, reaching for their weapons. Caleb moved without hurry, without wasted motion. Each shot deliberate. Each step measured. It was over quickly. It always was. Dalton stood alone at the end, gun trembling slightly in his hand. "This isn't over," he said. Caleb didn't raise his weapon again. "It is," he said. Dalton hesitated, then turned and rode. Eliza stepped out after the dust settled. Her eyes moved over the bodies, then to Caleb. "You didn't have to do that," she said. "Yes," he said quietly. "I did." She came closer. There was blood on his sleeve, not his. She reached out, then stopped, her hand hovering. He closed the distance, took her hand in his. It was warmer now. "You can leave," he said, "if you want." She shook her head. "No, the we." Word was steady, certain. He studied her, as if committing something to memory. "Why?" he asked. She met his gaze. "Because you saw me," she said, "when no one else did." The wind moved through the grass around them, soft, endless. Caleb nodded once, and for the first time in a long while the weight he carried shifted. Not gone, not forgotten, but lighter. not alone. They buried the dead at the edge of the land, worked side by side. No words, none needed. That night, the sky stretched wide and clear above them, stars scattered like something fragile and infinite. Eliza sat on the steps, her shoulder brushing his. Neither of them moved away. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote called. The world went on. But here, in this small, hard-earned place, something had changed. Not loudly, not all at once, just enough.